Welcome to the Chenango Forks Board of Education regular meeting, February 10th, 2021. Will the clerk please conduct roll call?
Amy O'Brien.
Here.
Spiros Tomatos.
Here.
Mary Collins.
Here.
Michael Vavra.
Here.
And Lynn Lockwood.
Here.
We have a quorum. I call the meeting to order.
I, Erin McMullen, Board Clerk, have confirmed with Council that this meeting is being held in compliance with Executive Order 202.1, issued by Governor Andrew M. Cuomo on March 12, 2020. The Executive Order suspends Article 7 of the Public Officers Law to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take any action authorized by law without permitting in public, in-person access to meetings and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service. This meeting is being held remotely via Zoom virtual meeting software. The public has the ability to view or listen to this meeting live via the Zoom app, web browser, and/or by telephone. This meeting is being recorded and will be transcribed at a later date.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.1 Superintendent Report.
You have to unmute Dr. Peck.
Okay. Again, what I just said was absolutely brilliant, but no one heard it, so I apologize. Amy, I have 4 things I believe on my report that I want to go over tonight. The first one is, and I see her on here, it is Cynthia Wamba, and she is our liaison for CBO. She's the lady I meet with once a month, and we go over all of our numbers, our projections, and she keeps me on track. She'd like to do a budget presentation to the board and community tonight. So we need to Cynthia the screen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. Let me pull this up. You should be able to see it here. There we go. Everyone can see that okay? Great, thank you. So tonight, I'd like to take just a few moments to talk about the projected operating performance for 2021 for this year. I'd also like to take a few moments to talk about the governor's proposal for next year's aid and look at your long-range projection. To start with, for the operating performance for this year, we are expecting to have an operating surplus for this fiscal year of about $403,000. I do expect, though, that this is going to change some before the end of the year. More so than any other year in my experience, there's been greater uncertainty as to the need for certain expenditures and even what some of the revenues will be due to the unique circumstances that we find ourselves in with COVID-19. So this will change some, and we do update the superintendent and Mr. Petrino on this monthly. The $403,000, what's driving that is mostly savings and salaries this year, reduced need for substitute teachers. There's also unfilled positions at varying times throughout the year, and we're expecting to have less costs for instructional hourly and stipends due to the circumstances related to the hybrid model. We're also seeing savings on special education placements, and this is contributing to the surplus. Again, some of these savings could also be related to COVID-19. One of the things that we look at for a district is what your overall total fund balance is, and this is your overall savings essentially for the general fund. And you started this year with $5.4 million of total fund balance, and to that we will add the $403,000 of the projected gain this year for a total of $5.8 million approximately we're expecting at the end of the year. This is made up of 4 different categories of savings. You have your restricted reserves. We're expecting to be close to $3 million at the end of the year, $197,000 potential gain. And we'll look at your reserves specifically here in another slide. No change to your appropriated fund balance. That would remain at $500,000. Your encumbrances, right now we're projecting those at 0. Encumbrances are simply purchase orders at the end of the year that you still have orders outstanding on, or you haven't paid for those services yet, and they carry over into the new fiscal year. So we started with $106,000 that carried over from 1920, and we will have some encumbrances at the end of the year, but for right now, we're projecting them all as expenditures. Then that leaves your unassigned fund balance. This is the most unrestricted category of savings that you can have. You started the year with $2,087,000 and will end the year with $2.4 million. Potentially. This is a $313,000 gain. That will go up or down as that surplus changes from $403,000. Unassigned fund balance is the most unrestricted form of savings. And one of the things that we are strongly advocating for is that districts across the state be allowed to retain a higher amount in the unassigned fund balance than they may now. This unrestricted category of fund balance allows districts to have greater flexibility for times of financial crisis. NISCUS, New York State Council on School Superintendents, is advocating that the limit be raised from 4% to 8%, and we wholeheartedly support that initiative. There are local legislators who have put forth this legislation and are supporting it, and we are very grateful for that. When we look at that one category of savings, it's for your reserves, and you do have 5 reserves, and these are restricted for the purpose, the use of these are restricted to the purpose of the reserve. You have an unemployment insurance reserve, which the board did approve some use of already this year, around $7,000. You have the retirement contribution reserve, which pays for the cost of the employee retirement system pension costs. And you have about $1.5 million in that reserve. We would not fund or recommend using that reserve this year and saving that for future years. Recently, in past years, the state allowed for us to set up a sub-fund of that retirement contribution reserve to pay for TRS costs, teacher retirement system costs. And we do absolutely recommend funding that this year. We have funded that the last 2 years, and you can only fund a certain amount, 2% of teacher salaries, so about $200,000 a year into that, up to 5 years worth, but over 5 years. So we are going to take advantage of funding that so that you could set aside a total of about $600,000 towards TRS cost for a future year in a financial crisis. The employee benefit accrued liability reserve is used to pay for time earned upon separation. So any vacation or sick days owed. There is about $145,000 in that reserve. We will assess at year end whether we would recommend to you to fund that or not. And then finally, the capital reserve has $423,000 in that, and we would not recommend funding or using that reserve this year for a total of $2.9 million in reserves. That's an overview of where we expect to end this year. And now on to the highlights from the executive proposal. So the governor is proposing a couple of different things that are unusual for this year. First, the largest category of aid is foundation aid. Oh, I apologize. And he is proposing that that would remain flat. So there would be no increase to foundation aid essentially since 1920, as the 2021 foundation aid remained flat as well. He's then including in his proposal a reduction of state aid, or state support, I should say, that would be backfilled 1-for-1 by federal stimulus funds. For Chenango Forks, this amount is based on $952 a student. So there's a formula for that, but it's highly tied to Title I funding. So districts that receive more Title I funds would receive more federal stimulus funds. So you may have heard of other districts that would receive more, and that is because they would be receiving more Title I funds as well. It's tied to that. The other thing that he is proposing this year that's very significant would be to consolidate expense-driven aids once again into services aid. So he would consolidate transportation, BOCES, supplemental excess cost aid, instructional materials aid into one category of aid. In current law, all of these are aided individually. And as you spend more, you would get more aid. As you spend less, you would get less aid. And so they're predictable. Now he is proposing to consolidate them with no proposal for an increase in the future. So they would be frozen at that level. And that's deeply concerning. And I'll give you a real life example. Say you typically buy, and I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head how many buses you typically buy, but say you typically buy 3 buses. And one year you know that you need to buy 4 buses. If that aid becomes frozen at your 3 bus level, when you go to buy that 4th bus, you would not receive more transportation aid, where typically under current law, you could expect to receive that transportation aid. So there are some very serious concerns about consolidating these aids. This has gone to the legislature before, and they have always negotiated this out of the final budget. So we're very hopeful and would support that happening again. To look specifically at your reduction of state support, Chenango Forks would have their state aid reduced by almost $1.3 million, $1,270,000.
Cynthia, can I ask a question on the previous
Yes,
slide?
absolutely.
So you said that the reduction per student of $952 would be replaced by federal aid.
Yes.
Are we guaranteed that we're getting federal aid, or is that going to change if we don't get federal aid?
So what the governor did is he assumed a range of federal stimulus that the state would receive. And this version of the budget is based on receiving an additional $3 billion from the federal government, which is the very low end of his assumed range. I've heard commentary from various groups that they felt that this was a safe number, that we most likely would receive actually more than $3 billion. And then at that time, if there was more, then he would decide how to, to best utilize those funds across the state for a variety of purposes, not just education. So you're correct in that it's not guaranteed, but all signs are leaning that we would get $3 billion. New York State would. Okay.
And then that gets distributed by the governor's office to the various schools, or that gets directly sent to the schools from the federal government?
It goes to the state, and then the state has reporting requirements back to the federal government. So there's an application process. We have one for this year as well for the stimulus funds that we're receiving this year, which are much smaller. We have to apply for those. That gets approved by SED, and then it would be just like a grant. We spend it, they give us the cash back for it. But it does run through the state, and then cumulatively the state has to report that back to the federal government.
Okay, thank you.
So the state's taking away from you $1.3 million, let's say, and they're going to replace that with that federal stimulus funds. So it's a 1-for-1, but you're not getting any additional. There are some districts that have higher need, and they're the ones that get the greater Title I funding. They would be receiving additional funds beyond their reductions, but most of the districts in this area, it is a 1-for-1 cut and then supplanting with federal funds. The services aid for Chenango Forks, those categories that would be consolidated would be transportation aid, BOCES aid, instructional materials aid, which is textbooks and whatnot, and then supplemental excess cost aid. You don't have high tax aid. So right now, if we consolidated those in this budget, it would be 4.2 million. Next year, based on your current projected expenditures for this year, it would be 4.1 million. This is a little less than what's in the executive proposal, because we do believe if it actually goes through, that these aids would be consolidated based on actual expenditures for this year. And due to the extraordinary circumstances this year, you're spending less in some areas than you typically would, and all districts are. And so we are recommending a budget decrease there of $93,000. We will revisit that at the end of March to see if there needs to be any adjustments based on spending through March. This was based on a projection through the end of January. Here's a total of your aid, and you can see that we are recommending, well, we're not recommending, it is what it is, that foundation aid is flat year to year. So there's a 0% increase. Your funding adjustment that I spoke of, there's no increase or decrease, it nets to 0. Your building aid would go up $51,000. Your services aid would go down $93,000, and your expense-driven aids, which is mostly your excess cost aids, will go down about $7,000 for a total aid decrease of $48,000. Now, this is unusual because normally you have an aid increase most years. So you're going to see several $100,000 potentially of an aid increase year to year, but this year you're looking at a $48,000 decrease. We like to look at it excluding building aid because this is really what impacts program. The building aid will impact debt service, but we are seeing if we take building aid out of the picture, it's a $100,000 decrease to aid projected for next year based on the executive proposal. So we will have to wait to see what happens with the legislature to see if they are able to do anything about that. The greatest concern, if you ask me, about this proposal is that local funding adjustment or the local district funding adjustment, the LDFA. And for those that remember the times of the ARRA, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and then the GEA, we're back in that same cycle again. So when we had the last financial crisis, we did receive stimulus funds through the ARRA Act, and then the state cut state funds, and then they paid that back over a long period of years. It was 7 years. So our concern is that we're going to be back in the same situation that we had before with the GEA, that restoration of that $1,270,000 that's cut in this year, coming in this fiscal year under the executive proposal, would not be restored in one whole year. It would take potentially several years to have that restored. And that's an awful situation for Forks, for Chenango Forks, and for all districts across the state to be in. So we're all very concerned about this potential funding cliff. And you think about it took the GEA 7 years. We don't have 7 years to make this up. It's not financially viable. So something would have to happen. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of options. We would have to either continue to receive stimulus funds from the federal government, or the state would have to find a way to fund education. And that would most likely mean reductions in other areas unless their revenue projections come in better than expected. So that is a very significant concern, and one that you're going to see that will address in the long range projection. So as we take a look at the long-term picture, which doesn't look good, it doesn't look good for anybody, for any school district. We had to pick something. So what do you use? How fast do you think all of this is going to come back? No one knows. No one can. No, they can barely tell us what's happening this year, much less what might happen in the future years. So we've assumed that foundation aid would remain flat. So 0% increases continued for foundation aid. And what they would increase would be a restoration of that cut. So we're assuming a 5-year restoration at 20% a year. It could really be anything, and most likely it'll be tied to high cost districts. So high cost districts will be most likely funded back faster than lower cost districts, or lower need districts, I should say. The expenditure driven aids, we are projecting those to moderately increase over the years. And then the tax levy is projected at the tax levy limit. That's an estimated one. You can see here that the majority of your revenues comes from state aid. So a change to state aid, a negative change to state aid, is going to more greatly impact your budget. On the expenditure side, right now, salaries are based on the first draft of the 21-22 budget. We're working with Mr. Petrino closely, and so that might change some. The 21-22 budget's a work in progress, but we have based this long-range projection on those salaries. Health insurance right now for next year would be an 8.8% increase over this year's expected cost. And then in the future years, it would decrease slightly, but not significantly, maybe 8.5 to 8 to 7% increase a year respectively. We are expecting the teacher retirement system TRS and the employee retirement system ERS costs for pension to increase some. And then especially in 21-22, we would see a bounce back in other costs, especially BOCES, for expenditures that would be increased as we return to full-time in-person instruction. There are definitely some expenditures that are down this year, and so we would start to see those rebound back upwards in 21-22, and then more nominal increases in the rest of the years. So when we look at this, let's talk about the tax levy first. We have projected out your tax levy limit. For this coming school year, it would be 1.43%, assuming there's no changes to any of the factors between now and the time you adopt the budget. And that's based on a CPI, excuse me, of 1.23. In the outer years, it does go up closer to 2 based on a CPI of 2. Now, CPI could be less than that, and that would reduce the projected tax levy limit. Then we start this year with your total savings of that fund balance of $5.4 million. We add to that the $403,000 potential surplus this year for an ending balance of 5.8. We start 21-22 with $5.8 million, and we're looking at a potential deficit for next year based on what we know now. You're going to make adjustments to this. You're going to make adjustments to the 21-22 budget. And in the end, I believe that this will be less because you have to do something about it. You can't continue on with an operating deficit every year. And then that would, if that were to hold, it would draw down on that ending fund balance. But what I really want you to focus on is what I'm talking about, that funding cliff. And this is what all districts are going to be experiencing. If we assume in the 22-23 school year that this is the year that the federal stimulus money goes away, that they don't refund that in the next year, and the state only pays back a little bit of that cut at a time, then you will have a significant shortfall in revenue compared to your increases in expenditures. And you're going to have a significant operating loss if all things stay the same. Now, you can't have that big of a loss. It's not sustainable. So you're going to have to do something about that. You'd have to reduce expenditures. You're not alone in this. Every single school district is going to be up against this because you're all under the same, you all have the same issue. There's a reduction of state aid. And, you know, I work with multiple districts, so I can see the trend. And in any given year, typically expenditures, unless there are reductions of expenditures, increase about 4 to 4.5%. Revenues only can increase probably no more than 2%. So you have a gap every year of 2.5% that districts have to find a way to resolve. They can either use savings, they can reduce expenditures, or a combination of the two, but you have to do something. And the issue is that you've all been reducing expenditures and you've been taking that low-hanging fruit for years now. And so it's going to be really quite tough in the future unless the state is able to restore that funding faster to really be able to continue to educate kids as they need to be educated. And so I don't want to be doom and gloom, but this is facing everybody. And we all recognize this, and we just want to make people aware of what could potentially happen if the executive proposal goes through, if the federal stimulus funds aren't continued long-term, which most likely won't happen, and if the state doesn't restore education funding to where it needs to be. In the outer years, it only gets worse because this model is assuming that you don't do anything in these first 2 years. You would do something, you'd have to be forced to. And so it would make these outer years look better. So we almost don't even want to show these because they're so far out in the future, they're meaningless at this point. But you can see that this is not sustainable. You would run out of fund balance. You would run out of your savings in essentially 23-24. And you're not alone there. Any questions on that? Any questions on the state aid for next year or anything else? Okay. All right. That's all that I had then, Dr. Peck.
Cynthia, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I wish I had better news.
Well, like you said, all the districts in the state are facing it, and we're gonna have to cope with it and deal with it, and hopefully some more aid comes through. So it is, it's nothing we really have a lot of control over at this point.
As we learn more information, we'll be sure to pass that along. Thank you for your
Okay.
time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia. Next, we have Mr. Rulo in the middle school for presentation.
Let me just get our presentation opened here on the screen. Oops, that's the end. All right, can everybody see that? All right. Good evening, everybody. Jessica, Natalie, and I appreciate the opportunity to present on some support systems that we have in place in our middle school to support students that are not only excelling or struggling in some aspect of school. So one of the biggest benefits of the way that our schedule is set up in our middle school is that our grade level teams have team meeting time built in, so they are able to meet on a weekly basis. So during these meetings, they're constantly discussing instruction, curriculum, but student progress and student needs. So out of that, comes information of ways that we can support excelling students and ways that we can support students that are struggling. So some ways that we support all of our students is our teams recognize students of the week each week and students of the month each month. So we provide students with certificates. We read this information on the announcements, and then we reach out to families as well, because we want to, share in this joy, with our community and with our families. And then at 5-week intervals each quarter, teams analyze student data. So how are students progressing? What needs do they have? And then teams decide on students and families that they'll reach out to. So each teacher in our building makes phone calls each 5 weeks. Some of these are students that are struggling. So every student in our building that's struggling with an aspect of school gets a call from one of our staff members. And then we also select students that are excelling with an aspect of school, and we reach out to those families as well. So approximately in a normal year, about 70, to 80% of our families are contacted at each 5-week interval with a phone call. This year, that number has gone up just because of, the needs of our students with our, educational system. Then at 10 weeks, we make sure that each student receives, a comment from each teacher for each class. We feel that that's important to provide feedback to students and to parents and guardians. And then again, teams meet, they look at data. We identify students that are struggling. All right. And then we put these students on like a mandatory office hour schedule where we can provide them with extra support. Now, in a normal school year, that would be like remedial or study hall support. This year, it's via Zoom. So it's not always as easy to get, students to show up, for Zoom when they're home, but we're doing our best. And then students that are excelling each quarter, we recognize them with honor roll. They receive a letter from me along with their report card, and then we post this information on our school webpage. Some things that we, put into place this year is at each quarter, our pupil personnel team, which would be our school counselors and our school psychologists, they get together and they create individual and small group meeting lists. So they meet with these students on a regular basis. They talk to these students about setting goals, expectations for themselves, and what supports do they need to be more successful, at school. So this is first quarter data because we just finished our second quarter. So we're still working on these lists, but after quarter number 1, 41 students in our 8th grade were put into these small group meetings, 25 of our 7th graders and 26 of our 6th graders. Okay, then that team also reaches out to families and students on a weekly basis in regards to attendance and any social emotional issues that we're seeing, and academics, of course. One thing that we're starting right now, actually next week, for quarter number 2 data, is we're starting what we're calling 15-minute meetings. So we've set up a 15-minute Zoom meeting with parents and students for any student that's struggling with one or more academic classes at this point. So we'll see, how that goes in a couple of weeks. Also this quarter, we were finding from the start of the school year that we felt like we weren't providing enough office hour time, that too many staff members had office hour time at the same time or the same period. So, our site-based council worked together with me, and we spread these office periods out. So now students have access during the day for their core teachers, 2 periods plus the 2:30 to 3 o'clock slot, and then their special area teachers 1 period a day. So really 4 time slots that are spread out throughout the day to get support from one of their teachers or to ask, any questions they have with what they're learning. This year, just due to the circumstances and transportation, we can't have normal remedial. However, what we started, and this started at the beginning of December, is we offered to any of our hybrid students the option to stay at school from 2:30 to 3 o'clock rather than leaving at dismissal at 2:17. However, they had to be able to provide their own transportation, or if they lived in the community adjacent to school, they could walk. So we did get 21 8th graders to sign up for this, 15 7th graders and 6 6th graders. And we did definitely see growth in their academics just from staying that extra half an hour and working with our staff members. We also put into place an extra support session on Wednesdays. So some of our support staff members that push into our classes, they come to the building from 11 to 1 o'clock, and students can either come to the building if they're a hybrid student, or they can Zoom in for those 2 hours after they have the 2 hours of office support time from their classroom teacher. So we were hoping this number would grow and be larger, but at this point we have 19 students in our building that signed up for this and are taking advantage of this. And again, with those students that are doing this on a weekly basis from 11 to 1 o'clock, we are seeing growth in their academics. And our teams, our site-based council are constantly talking about ways to provide more support to students. Last week, we actually created a system and a schedule where we were able to bring our 6th grade IEP students back 4 days a week to give them some extra support. And that's going well so far. And we're hopeful to be able to do that with our 7th graders in a couple more weeks. And then we would move to the 8th grade as long as, capacity holds and we're still seeing, positive feedback from that. So now Mrs. Stark is going to talk about a program that we utilize in ELA.
Hello, thank you, as Mr. Rulo said, for the opportunity to talk about some of our programs in the middle school. So most of my 24 years of teaching has been spent with secondary literacy and mostly at Chenango Forks Middle School. So Lexia Power Up is the program that I use in RTI. It's a computer adapted blended literacy program. So the process that led to the selection of Lexia is somewhat a long road, but I'll keep it short. I was introduced to the program when I was at Sydney in 2011. I worked really closely with a woman named Catherine Bailey. She was the curriculum director, just absolutely brilliant. And we spent hours talking about what does secondary literacy instruction look like when the skill gaps widen, but yet we have less time with students. And so she introduced me to Lexia for intensive word work for our students. So not only could I work on reading and writing, students could have intensive work with word study, and also I could have data. So fast forward, when I returned to the district and came to the middle school, I worked with Mr. Pavlovich and then Mr. Rulo for a couple of years. They probably got tired of me talking about, well, I want to implement something. So I researched many programs. I looked at prices, what it provided, and really the quality of Lexia just was the best choice. So the program is designed for struggling non-proficient readers in grades 6 and up. The program was founded in 1984, so it's been around for a long time, and it's research-based and standards-based. Initially, their program Core 5, that's their flagship program, that was pre-K5. And then I was happy to see, as I was researching, that they expanded it to the secondary level. Because with adolescent readers who struggle, you want to be respectful of, recognizing what they need, but also, giving them materials that look like something that a teenager would want to read and work on. So the program has a really interesting interface. It's interactive and it's geared towards adolescents. So that's, how it came to be that I asked for this program. So thankfully, Mr. Rulo was, and all of you were supportive of letting us pilot it. So the way it works over on the right, you see the students start with a rapid assessment, and then there are 3 areas: word study, grammar, and comprehension. So after the students take the assessment, they're placed within 3 zones of development: foundational, intermediate, and advanced. So that's K2, 3, 5, 6, 8. So you can have a student at this level who, maybe their comprehension is stronger, but their word study is the area that we need to focus on. So the program is adaptive and personalized to them. There's lessons, there's videos and activities, and it's constantly adapting. So the benefits are the program are wide reaching. It's personalized, it's targeted, it's explicit instruction. There are many benefits. Students can take ownership of their learning. So when they log in, they have those 3 areas to work on. Because of our limited time, I might tell them, I'd like you to work on word study today. It allows for differentiation with those 3 zones of development. The students don't know where they fall within the 3 areas. I would never tell them that, but the program is constantly adapting to where they are. It also allows for flexibility of instruction. So I can work on guided reading with a couple students, and then a couple students could be working on another area in the program, and then we could flip flop. As Mr. Rulo said, we've all had to adapt this year. So typically I would use it in my class as a literacy station, but now that's part of what they're expected to do when they're not with me in class. There are numerous supplemental resources with the program for teachers, students, and parents. There's targeted lessons, skill builders, school home connections. Some parents have asked for additional materials and lessons, and I've sent them home. So we can go to the next slide. So initially, with Mr. Rulo's support and all of you, we piloted the program starting in January of 2020. So I first used it just with RTI. I assisted the consultant teachers to get all of their students on there. And then, as we all know, with the unforeseen closure, we ended up expanding it because it was unlimited use for all teachers and students in the building to have access to it. So during that unprecedented time, it was an excellent resource. That's not really what the program is designed for, but it did allow a great way to have students practicing explicit literacy skills. It gave the teachers data. But as we were at the end of the year, I even surveyed the students to ask them, out of all I tried 3 different programs with them piloting. I said, what do you feel is best? And they themselves said, Lexia is giving us the best instruction for, the supplemental time we spend on there. So this year, I'm just using RTI in my classes. And for next year, we've requested again to be used in my classes along with 15-1 English class. As far as the data goes, it's a data-driven program. It's real-time data. I can constantly see what are they working on, how are they progressing. As we make RTI decisions, whether a student is progressing and eventually we can release them from services, or we might find, what, we've done everything we can and the student is still struggling. We can also use the data for the other end of things. Also supplemental lessons and skill builders are provided that I can use with students. And then there's also the website there if you did want to check it out. And then the impact on student growth. The next few slides, I have some samples of this is a portion of the data page that I get to see. I can see, you can notice on the left, it says target minutes, 105 minutes. It's recommending that the students are way on there more than I would ask. I mean, the students have so much screen time now. I have my own kids this age. I'm very aware of that and mindful when I ask them to work on the program. I try to keep it limited. So I adjust it each week depending on if we have a break or not. But this is a student who's been dedicated since the closure till now. The student spent a lot of time on the program, and you can see below, I can track, where they started in the program, and those blue dots as they go up, it shows how they're progressing. Again, this student made a lot of progress due to their dedication, and there's a direct correlation with how they're doing in English class. The English teachers are also seeing that progress. And then on the next slide, It's another example of student growth. And again, it's a student who's very dedicated and spending the time on the program, and they themselves recognize that, yes, it's helping. It's a little bit tricky now to fit this time in just because of our current format. And there's also a lot of additional data that the program provides for me. So it's a comprehensive program. I'm thankful to be able to use it with all of your support. And if you have any questions, you could email me, or I put the website on there so you could see a little bit more about the program. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jessica. Now Natalie's going to just describe a math program that we're utilizing in the middle school.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak about IXL. So we're using IXL in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I use it for my RTI classes this year, especially with the structure of this year. I would normally see students 3 times a week, but now I'm only seeing them 1 time a week in the classroom. So I'm using IXL a lot outside of the classroom so that they can build on their topics. And it allows me to really see what they're understanding or what they need more help in, so that when I do see them that 1 time a week, I really can hone in and help them on those skills. Some of the features are there's a learning, a diagnostic, and analytics section for both students and teachers. So there's a wide variety of topics they can see. There's also a live classroom view for the teacher. So when students are working, I can see exactly what they're working on, what they're struggling on, or if they're excelling. All of the questions are standard based, so they align with our New York State standards. And the great thing I love about this program is that there's example questions and explanations provided for the students. So it really allows them to work independently and on their own, but still get that help by seeing an example or seeing an explanation given. Some of the benefits also, it gives teachers a real look into their understanding and knowledge on topics, so I can see exactly what students are or are not understanding. It also gives them individualized learning, and they can fill in their gaps or areas they're struggling in, and it just gives students more opportunity for practice. A lot of times I have students that ask me for extra questions in a certain topic, and I can point them right to IXL specific lessons that they can practice. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a teacher, when I log in, I'm brought to the learning page, which is on the left-hand side, and I'm brought right to 7th grade math, and I can assign topics from anything in 7th grade math based on the standards. And to assign a topic, there's a star that's next to it, and I can assign a specific topic to a full grade level. I can assign it to a specific class or a specific period. And I can also assign it to specific students. So if a student asks me for more help, or I notice that they need a little bit more practice in a certain section, I can assign it specifically to them. It also allows anywhere from pre-K up until calculus. So there's a wide variety of topics and grade levels that you can choose from. On the right-hand side, there is a diagnostic that students can take, and it walks them through different problems and it puts them at their current level. So students would start with questions from pre-K and then work their way up. And once the questions start getting more difficult, or once they've kind of reached their limit, it would stop them and it would put them at a specific level. So I can see where their gaps are, where they need more help, and we can work on filling those gaps by assigning specific topics in that area. For the analytics portion, I can filter to see specific students, I can see a whole class, I can look at a specific topic, or I can look at a specific date, and it breaks it down so that teachers can see practice by category, but also you can see practice by day, how many questions are answered, how long students have spent, and then underneath the portion where it's for the whole class, there is then a breakdown for each individual student. So it would say the student's name, as well as each of the topics they've practiced, how long they've practiced, how many attempts they've done, things like that. So I can really hone in and see each specific student and what they're working on or how they're progressing. This is a view of the live classroom. So when students are working, I can see exactly who is on, who is maybe idle, so they have it open, but they're not really working on anything at that point in time. But then the feature that I really enjoy is that I can see students that may need help. So they'll pop up in red and it will say they've gotten so many questions wrong in a row, or they're struggling on this topic. So last year, when I would do this as a check-in in class, I would be able to go to that specific student and help them individually on that specific topic. This year, when I assign it, if students are working from home, I send them a Schoology message or an email. I make sure to reach out and I ask them to come see me in office hours, or when they're in school, I ask them to check in with me in class or a study hall so that I can help them in the area that they're struggling in. So this is just a student view. When the students log in, they're brought right to the Learning tab. Now they can view the diagnostics and the analytics, just like we went through with the teacher view. But when the students are brought to their Learning tab, they're able to get recommendations on lessons that they should be working on. So underneath their name, there would be the star, and that's where they would see the skills that were suggested by their teacher. So a lot of times we like to assign the topics that we're practicing in class that week or that unit for extra practice. But students do have the opportunity to work on those gaps. So underneath in that blue section, there could be practice lessons for their diagnostic level or other concepts that are related to what we're practicing in class that might not have been assigned. So students do have that option to work still on their gaps, but also work on the material that their teachers have assigned. When students are working on problems, they have a wide variety of different problems. There's matching, there's fill in the blank, multiple choice, there's short answer, graphing. So it's a wide variety, and it gives the students a mix of different types of problems and different types of problem solving that they could work through. Like I said earlier, if students are struggling, there is the option to learn with an example. So if they clicked learn with an example, then it would bring up a practice problem. It would walk them through step by step how to solve it, and it would also give them an explanation. On the right-hand side, while students are working, they can see how many questions they've answered, how much time they're spending, and then it also gives them a SMART score. And it's not just the percentage that they've gotten correct out of how many questions. It's actually based on correct and incorrect answers, but also the difficulty of the questions, their recent answers, and their consistency. So it's really trying to push kids to be more consistent with their answers and not just kind of guess and check and hopefully they get a higher score. It's really making them be consistent in their practice. And then finally, if students do get a question wrong, then every time they get an explanation underneath their question. It'll start by giving them their original question and then their answer, but then it will also go into things to remember with that topic. So maybe some vocab or what they're studying. And then underneath it will also go through how to solve it. So it'll again walk them through how to solve. It'll give them an explanation, but also give them the visual of how they can solve the problem. And then students are able to click got it, and they can try another problem that's similar. So again, this program is really nice because it's very student driven. Students can practice on their own, but they have the ability to see answers and get help that way. But teachers also have the ability to assign them specific topics and work with the students on this program to further build their skills.
All right, that's everything that we have for tonight. Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you all again for the time.
And thank you, Mr. Rillo, for the school presentation. Ms. Zagoda, Ms. Stark, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And we have two more things under the superintendent's report. I'm going to skip to the last one really quick. As you know, we've had kind of a harsh winter this year, and we have used 4 of our 5 allotted snow days. If you see the weather that's coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to get very, very wintry, very quick. We're probably going to use that last snow day quickly. I've been in contact with the CFTA, and they have agreed that after we exhaust our 5th snow day, in lieu of giving back vacation days, we are going to be able to do remote instruction on days that we cannot come into the school. So I will get that out on the webpage to the parents and to the community. I wanted to let the board be aware of that. So we do have 1 more snow day that we can use, and hopefully we won't use it for a while, but I think we'll probably use it for the end of the month. Then after that, on days that we cannot come in, we'll be working remotely. And I have talked to the CFTA about that. So just FYI to the board, and again, I'll get it out to the community. Now, the next thing on the list, and I see we have Kara Zimmerman, Joy Thorne, Kim Walworth, Diane Croswell. Those are our 4 school nurses. Is Doc Nash on it all? Do we know yet? Oh, Doc Nash, there you go. Okay. I was under the impression you were calling in by phone. Good.
I tried. It didn't work.
Okay. Good to see you. As you, we've been looking at how we can start to bring our students back. Everyone knows that bringing students back is key. Right now, we're under the hybrid plan, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday's remote. And we've been talking as an admin team. We've been, the school board's discussed it in the last few meetings in open session. And we've done 2 surveys to the staff. I've called district superintendents in the area. I've talked to 5 or 6 different superintendents, different schools to see what they're doing. And we all know that high risk contact sports just started on the beginning of February. So that's going on. I am not an expert in the medical field. I've read the CDC, the DOH guidelines. I've kept up to date on everything. I know how other districts are doing it, bringing students back. They've repurposed teachers. They've had different space. They've done away with programs. They've done away with pre-K. Those are things we've not done in our district. So that's why we have the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. What I want to talk about tonight a little bit, and I know there's a elementary PowerPoint that Hannah and Catherine have been so generous to put together that kind of describes what we have going on in our district. We started to look at Shields as a idea of being able to bring students back, and we were talking K through 12. After talking with the middle school and their staff survey, talking with some of our medical professionals, and I'm going to let Dr. Nash, speak in this moment. Bringing back middle school and high school at this point, to me, it's just absolutely not possible. The amount of money it would take and the disruption it would cause, and I'll let Mr. Lowe, Mr. Daniel speak to that if you feel you need to, but I just don't think that's on the table right now to bring back middle school and high school 4 days a week safely. And I want to emphasize the key word here is safely. I mean, a lot of ways to do things, but to keep that 6-foot barrier, to keep those masks, to keep everything safe, that's what we want at the end of the day. It doesn't do us any good if we bring students back 4 days a week and they end up on quarantine and they're not in school at all. And that's my fear in the high school and middle school as our students move classes. If little Johnny is in middle school and he's, God forbid, gets COVID and he travels between 5 or 6 different teachers, he's going to take out 5 or 6 classes of students, which could be 70 or 80 kids and upwards of 5 or 6 teachers. And then you put aides in and the rest. So right now, I think as superintendent, I can take middle school and high school off the table at this point in time until guidelines change. Now, there was an article in the paper this morning that guidelines are going to be changing at the end of the week. That's good, but until we see them change, we have to deal with what we have, right? I mean, how many times have we heard this is going to change, that's going to change, and it doesn't change. In reality, the numbers on February 10th today are higher than they were on March 13th when we went into this COVID lockdown. So I'm going to be quiet, and I want to really hear from our medical doctor. I mean, he's the individual that's up to date, and I want to take some direction from. Then I'd like to hear from our 4 building nurses, and then I'm going to turn it over to Hannah and Catherine to give a snapshot of what the elementary looks like at this point. Because I think that's what we're really discussing right now is K through 5 is the only viable, discussable option. And I'm not saying it's viable, I'm saying it's discussable. I don't even think the middle school and the high school at that point that we can even begin to bring those kids back. And Drew and Dave Daniels, would you like to speak up on that before I turn it over to Doc Nash? Mr. Daniels, you're muted. I think Mr. Daniels is trying.
I would just like to emphasize, I saw the news the other night, and Dr. Fauci had commented that he did not feel at this point in time that it was in the best interest, at least for the high school kids to be coming back. The mobility of high school kids, the times that they're together and things like that. He just did not suggest that it was a good idea to do it at this particular point in time.
Mr. Rulo?
I think Dr. Peck made some very prescient observations with this. We still, until we see what the new CDC recommendations are going to be, supposed to come out Friday, we still have the 6-foot rule. I think our biggest weapons in this going forward, number one is vaccines. I think as time goes on and more people get the vaccines, I think we're going to start to see these numbers drop. Trying to get vaccines for the teachers and for the entire staff, any way we can do it would be very helpful. But in the meantime, we're still under the same guidelines that we've been with the past few months. And if physically you can't maintain the 6-foot distance, you're going to be putting a lot of people at jeopardy. And if you double the number of kids in a classroom at any level, we have to realize that we're taking the risk that if somebody does come up positive, we're going to have to quarantine twice as many kids. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and to piggyback on Doc Nash, nothing has changed from July of when the admin team came up with this plan, presented to the school board and the community. No regulations, no guidelines have lessened. And again, you got to remember, when you look at other schools, and we get compared to other schools nonstop. And I'm not going to talk about what other superintendents do or other schools do. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us. Everyone's different. But we are a one campus, 2 building district. We don't have a lot of room to spread out. Okay, and that's definitely a key. We actually had a plan at one point, and the admin team will agree to this because they were helping with the plan. We were all doing it together, where we were going to bring pre-K through 5 back 4 days a week. We were going to have to expand into the middle school and high school in order to do that, which would have put our middle and high school students, a little bit of middle school, and Mr. Rulo, correct me if I'm wrong, I think maybe 6th and 7th could come, but it was like 8 through 12. We just didn't have any classrooms for because we were spread out the elementary so much. And we were repurposed our RTI or AIS, our special ed teachers. We just heard from Jessica Stark, who's a reading teacher, another person that would have been repurposed out of the program she's in. So our students would have lost programs as well if we did it that way, okay? So we did have that plan at one point, but then we weighed against what's the give and take. Okay, we can bring them back, but our 8 through 12 is gonna lose out, and we're gonna have to repurpose those teachers, hence you're gonna lose pre-K and you're gonna lose programs as well. So what we put together in September, nothing has really changed as far as guidelines, and Doc Nash just said it. It's still 6 foot, it's still social distancing, it's still, everything's still going on. New guidelines may come out, they may come out. And again, I know other schools using shields and they're not doing the 6 foot, but it's what we're comfortable with and safety wise as well. I mean, we have to look at the safety of the students. God forbid someone gets sick or worse with COVID and we're not following the guidelines to the T that we should be following them, then the district's gonna be on the hook for that. And you know, Doc Nash is our medical doctor. And I think I just heard him say, you know, and I won't put words in your mouth, Doc Nash, you can speak up, that the 6 foot is what we should be doing and adhering to it. And even doing that so far, we've had to close the middle school. We've had to close the elementary school. For 2 weeks, admin, myself, Mr. McDermott, Mr. Hogan went over. We had the entire elementary office was on quarantine. We were down, you know, 10, 12 people again, and we kept the building open between the 3 of us, you know, filling in. Hannah and Catherine were working remotely, obviously, but still have to have presence in the building. So again, we've had quarantines, and I'd like, I'm looking, Shion, Kara, you're back there with Doc Nash.
Yep.
You talk a little bit about some of the quarantines. I know you started of the students and the faculty that we have quarantined.
Yeah, so, you know, for instance, this week we had 7 faculty members out, you know, due to exposures. So when that happens, you know, whether it's caused by a student, you know, we're juggling staff-wise just to try to make sure that classes are covered and that sort of thing. And you know, I don't see the issue would be like what Dr. Nash said, is that if we have more people, we're going to be quarantining far more often. We're finally at a point where I think we're starting to manage how it is because we have those guidelines in place. If we know we have kids 6 feet apart, there's an exposure in a classroom, it doesn't necessarily knock, you know, an entire middle school, high school class out the way it was before, if it's under a certain time limit. So that would all kind of go out the door if we mess around with it. I think, you know, right now that seems to be keeping things at bay.
Let me turn it over a little bit to Catherine and Hannah. I know that you've put together a PowerPoint. We went over earlier and we met for a couple hours and we talked about this. And I think your PowerPoint answers a lot of questions, and it may raise a few questions too for the board and the admin. We will take community questions after we're done speaking with our presentation. We will definitely open up and take questions from the community. But Hannah, would you like to take the screen and we start that presentation, please?
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'd just like to take this opportunity to talk through all things CFE when it comes to what we've experienced during the pandemic. The one thing I want to mention before I dive into this presentation is I want to make sure that I'm very clear that what's not in the presentation is the time, the energy, the effort of each person involved in the educational process, to include our partners, our parents, our families who have gone above and beyond in this process as well. Also, what's not here is the cost that the pandemic has had on the mental, the emotional, physical needs of all individuals involved, because we can't quantify these things. I can't put them in numbers for all of you to see, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the countless hours of all educators, not just CFE, of all educators, of learning, developing plans, shifting learning models, adjustments to screen learning, students who are coming in and out, off of quarantine, teachers who are in and out of quarantine. And we recognize, not only as a school, but I believe as a district, the toll this has taken on all people involved. So I wanted to say that first before we go forward, and I just wanted to bring to light some things that have happened with the elementary school as we're looking to bring back students 4 days a week. So as already mentioned by the superintendent, is that the New York State guidelines and Department of Health guidelines have not changed since July 2020. Has there been clarification of the guidelines through frequently asked questions? Absolutely. But the guidance overall has not changed. It's still recommended, as already mentioned, that individuals in school wear masks and they're socially distanced 6 feet wherever possible. Following these guidelines, most of our CFE classrooms can approximately fit anywhere from 12 to 15 students safely. The administration currently, along with the director of special ed, have met with staff and are hoping to prioritize bringing students back that fall under the New York State guidelines as high needs. This process has been ongoing, and we're bringing another wave of students back on February 16th. So these are our current CFE numbers. We have multiple groups of students. We have hybrid A students, we have 223 of them, hybrid B students, 209 of those students, and then a hybrid AB students who attend 4 days a week. These are our highest need students. Currently, we have 16, and we're welcoming another 9 on the 16th of February. And then we have our full remote students, and we have 163 full remote students. So what's happened so far this year? In September, we just want to share with you that all students who are part of our 15-1 and 8-1 special classes were invited to return in person learning 4 days a week as per the guidance. All students were enrolled in either a hybrid program or the fully remote program, depending on parent preference. In September, we had 1 positive COVID case reported and 12 students were put on quarantine due to the exposure. October, families were given the opportunity to change their current learning model choice from hybrid to remote, or remote to hybrid. 17 students made a change, 3 to full remote and 14 to hybrid. During that month, we had 5 positive COVID cases reported, 23 students were put on quarantine, and then 15 staff members were put on quarantine due to school exposure. And please note, we kept open and we kept moving forward. November, we had a positive COVID case, 4 students put on quarantine, and then 5 staff members put on quarantine. December, CFE was required to go full remote due to a high number of staff that was required to quarantine per the Department of Health. Excuse me, sorry. The entire Chenango Forks district went full remote 2 weeks prior to winter break. 2 positive COVID cases were reported. 19 staff members were put on quarantine due to a school exposure. In January, families once again were provided the opportunity to make a change to their current learning model. CFE office staff was quarantined, and district administration, as Dr. Peck already mentioned, and a high school secretary covered the CFE office in order to keep the building open for students. We felt that was necessary, a very wise decision, obviously, by our superintendent to keep us open. 15 positive COVID cases were reported in January, 24 students put in quarantine, and 7 staff members put on quarantine. February, 21 students made the change in their learning model, 2 to full remote, 19 to hybrid. 9 of our highest need students, as already mentioned, will attend school in person 4 days a week starting on February 16th. In February, we've had 1 positive case reported and 9 students put on quarantine due to a school exposure. Now, here's a heavy weight that has been carried by our nurses in the building. So far this year, 418 students have been assessed by a nurse either in the building or via phone call. 113 staff members have been assessed by a nurse either in the building or via phone call. That is only one step to this multi-step process. But we thought that those numbers are so important for you to see with the number of students we currently have in the building. And I have to say, if you haven't thanked a medical professional, please do so, because they're heroes. This work is unbelievable that has to be done. And we're certainly greatly appreciative of the things that have been done. If these individuals are found to have COVID symptoms, they're required to get a negative COVID test prior to returning to the building. Again, extensive amount of conversations, paperwork, so on and so forth that goes into this as we meet the requirements, not only for our district, but for the state as well. So these are our hybrid class numbers right now. So if we were to combine both the A and B group, this is what the class numbers would look like. Keep in mind that, as we mentioned, like safely, we can sometimes fit 12 to 15 students in a classroom. Doesn't mean we can do that in all classrooms. Obviously, you see these numbers are all over 12. And that's something we wanted everyone to be able to see what that looks like. Our desks are currently 6 feet apart, but keep in mind these numbers are split because these are the hybrid class numbers. And then you also see here the fully remote class numbers of all of our fully remote classes that we've offered at the elementary school. So these are our recommendations as we move forward in March and April, continue to slowly bring back our highest needs students 4 days a week, which we are currently doing. As we've mentioned, if the guidance changes from New York State Ed or the Department of Health, then we move forward to bring back all students to 4 days of in-person learning before the end of the school year. So at this point, that is our suggestion as we move forward. Please note, we do think in following the guidance to bring back our highest needs students, we should continue to do that in waves, which we've done that in 2 waves so far. We would like to continue to do that in waves. And just in case anyone is, needs to fully understand, it's individuals, with individualized instruction plans, students who are possibly receiving RTI. It could be students who are have other concerns that we're addressing as a school as well. So hopefully that was insightful and provided the information that is possibly needed as we move forward to make further decisions. We're happy to answer any questions that we have or any questions that people may have. And if there is additional information that we need to provide, we're happy to do that at a later date as well. Thank you for your time, and a special thanks to Ms. Ellen for always being available, but always going above and beyond. Could not function at CFE without her.
Catherine, thank you very much for that presentation. Hannah, thank you very much for helping put that together as well. And the whole point of that was just to give the community, and Catherine, you started very eloquently, and I totally agree with you that this has been something on every parent, teacher, community member, student that you know, COVID is just affected us all. But the point of that presentation was really to show people what the elementary has gone through since September. And you may look and say you've had one COVID case or two COVID cases in a month, but that's because we've been doing everything right, in my opinion. We've been following the CDC, the DOH, we've been doing the social distancing. Our teachers are super conscious of what's going on. So those numbers are indicative of doing everything right on our part. And my fear is, and I want to open up to the 5 board members next to ask questions, is I have a great fear that if we bring these kids back and we put the shields on the tables and we break the 6 feet and they're 2 feet or 1 foot or 3 feet apart, that those numbers are going to skyrocket. And that's my worry right now is can we bring kids back? Sure we can. Absolutely. Can we do it safely? That's where I'm struggling. And again, I'll take questions. You know, got Doc Nash on here as well. He's going to, you know, take questions, answer questions. We have our nurses and again, that's where we're at as a district. You know, I know what other districts are doing and I know what other districts have done, but like I said, all districts are different and there's a give and take. You know, other districts may last some academics that we didn't lose. You know, Catherine has talked, Drew's talked, Dave has talked about the higher needs students. We've really made sure that they've been in focus during this whole pandemic, and we've really tried to not take services away from them, not take our pre-K away from our pre-K students. So there's trade-offs on what we've done and what other districts have done. So I open it to the 5 board members first before we go out to the community for questions for myself, for the admin team, the nurses, the Doc Nash, any of us?
Catherine, I was wondering if you could put that presentation back up, the screen where you had the classroom numbers on it. I had a question about that.
Absolutely, we'll be happy to.
So,
is this the slide?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're
Okay.
saying that currently, like in kindergarten class A, on hybrid A, there's like, say, 7 students, and hybrid B, there's 7 students. So if we bring them all back in, we'd have 14 students.
And that's correct.
Okay.
With that being said, that's without any of our remote students coming back into
Right.
the building,
Right.
which would obviously need to provide that option.
Right. And
But
right
Lynn,
now, currently, like, I know not all our classroom sizes are the same, but the max you can put in a classroom is 12. Is that what we're saying?
It's roughly 12. It depends on the classroom. Lynn, some can stretch a little bit further. And some are really, we really have to stop at that 12.
Okay.
And Lynn, when you look at this too, doesn't take into account remote students who want to come back. And on the flip side,
Right.
I think you're going to lose some hybrid students who don't feel safe coming back and not doing the 6 feet and doing what we're currently doing.
Right.
So I think there's going to be a trade-off on both ends. I think you may get some kids coming back saying, hey, 4 days, you know, we're going to come back. But other parents may say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with my student with a shield and not social distancing the 6 feet. I'm going to pull them. We're going to go fully hybrid, which that's going to cause, and Lynn, you were in aide in elementary, so you kind of know this. Mary Collins was a retired teacher. Mike Favre's the current teacher. This is really going to play havoc with classes of kids going remote, kids going hybrid, and the teachers as well. It's going to create havoc with the teachers. You know, I sat in with all this, the site-based, the grade level coordinators and all the meetings that we had at all the grade levels and the building levels. And one of the things the teachers kept saying over and over again, and I agree with them, is we have this down. We know what we're doing. We're teaching this well. The students have a routine. We have a routine. And to upset that routine now is what's it going to look like to start bringing kids back? What's it going to do to our teachers? What's it going to do to some of the students? I agree. Catherine said it. You know, I talked to our board president for a while the other day on the phone about mental health of the kids. We definitely got to take that into consideration as well. But again, what's it going to look like if we upset everything we're doing right now and go the opposite direction? I mean, you got to consider the mental health of the adults, the parents, the teachers, the students. So I think that's a very valid point of we've been doing this and we have it down. And I think the district have been doing it very good. So that's just something taken into consideration.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify in case anybody out there was wondering exactly what these numbers were, and they weren't like, oh, there's only 14 people, but so that's just why I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Lynn, for the question.
Lynn, I think the other thing too that's important to note is that while our classrooms could possibly have shields or barriers, our special area classrooms, like our gymnasium, could not hold a class of 20 kids with the current guidelines that require them to be 12 feet apart. So specials, everything that we've been able to really maintain almost as normal would have to be re-envisioned if we were to try to bring back all these students 4 days a week. That's just another piece of the puzzle.
Excellent point, Hannah.
So we're not saying, no, we're never going to open up classes for the rest of the school year. We're saying right now there's still too much that could happen. What we're going to reevaluate as things change.
Lynn, we reevaluate daily. And like I said, I've talked to 3 superintendents today and what they're doing and what they're going to their boards with. At the end of the week, we're supposed to be getting new guidelines right now to see what's going on. The other thing is we always see after a break, a spike, right? We saw a big spike after Thanksgiving. We saw a spike after Christmas. A lot of districts in the area, we don't have it in our policies, but neighboring districts have a February break coming up next week and an entire week off. Some of those people work in our county, work in our school. We also, April break's coming up. That's going to be a spike after April as well. So we're trying to figure out, do we bring them back maybe after April, after that spike, when we start opening windows? I mean, ventilation is a big thing with the virus and getting that through. So we're not saying we cannot bring students back this year. We're saying it's now the correct time to do so. And I think that's the big question on the table. Is it right now the best time? And I definitely think we need to bring students back this year. But again, do we bring them back and then April break hits and then all of a sudden, you know, Broome County spikes again like it did after Christmas and Thanksgiving? That's the question we keep facing. And God forbid we bring them back and we don't do the 6 feet and we do the barriers and someone gets deathly ill, and what's that going to look like in the district as well? I mean, you know, then we're going to be, well, you didn't follow the guidelines, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and now look at, you got half your school shut down. So those things, it's such a give and take. You can make an argument, a strong argument both ways. You can make a strong argument, yes, we need them back and we need to do it. And you can make a strong argument that now's not the time to do so. So it's, if we're back in high school and we had a debate club, this is the perfect debate question because there's so many points on each side, but you got to look and you know, I'm talking to Lynn, but I'm talking to the whole board and the community at the same time. It's safety. What's the safest thing the first thing with our students, and I've said it since I've been superintendent, we have to make sure our students are safe. You put 2 SROs on a few years ago to make sure our students were safe. We had 200 and some video cameras in our district to make sure our students are safe. Everything we do, we make sure our students are safe. Putting them back in a classroom with 22 students with shields, it kind of goes against the SROs and the cameras and all the safety measures we have. So again, if this school board tells me to do it, we will find a way to do it. I mean, Catherine and I, we've talked ad nauseum. Catherine, we will find a way to do it, correct? If we're given that directive to do it, we will do it.
Yes, we will. And CFE will do it. If any school can do it, elementary school in this region, our school can do it.
Okay, and so we're not saying that we won't do it, but what we're saying is I really want to hear from the 5 school board members. I mean, you guys are elected by the community. What's your take? You've listened to me, you've listened to Doc Nash, you've listened to Hannah and Catherine.
My opinion, I think we should seriously look into this. one thing about teachers, we all know they're very resilient. They're very easy to, transition and adapt to anything that comes their way. Based on what's happened since March of last year, teachers are great at doing that. We can what if scenarios to death. That's the thing. I mean, I don't want to plan on something as a what if scenario, but we've seen the repercussions of remote learning being not great. So I think this is something, I mean, yeah, maybe not next week start doing this here, but I think this is something seriously in the near future. And I mean by near future, probably in the nearest month or so, something we should seriously consider is K-5, getting our kids back at least 4 days a week, in my opinion.
So Mike, are you talking after April break? I mean, what would be your perfect timeline?
I mean, I like if we could just start maybe in March, getting, maybe one grade back 4 days, 1 week, and then the next week get another grade back. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think the sooner the better, honestly, just because I think kids need to be in school 4 days a week, especially elementary students.
Anything middle school and high school or no?
Well, like you said, middle school and high school is a different animal just because of all the changing and everything. At least with elementary, you got them in one classroom, and the middle school, high school, I would love to see them back 4 days a week. But if you say it's just too much because of all the changing and everything, I get, one kid goes to 5 different classes, you wipe out basically the entire grade level and staff. That's the big problem.
I know. I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that a couple things. One, I'm so happy that the high needs kids are coming back. I think that's critical. And the other thing is to make sure that people understand that this is not easy for teachers to be hybrid, and this whole, the way it is now is not easy for them. They're not picking an easy way out. It's very difficult. So just keep that in mind, that they want the kids back as badly as the rest of us do, but we have to understand they're not picking this way because it's easy.
What's your take, Mary, on coming back? If we should, when we should, what's in your mind?
I don't think we can make a decision now. I just, you can predict all you want, but we don't have the facts. We don't know what's going to change. So I don't think we can say that, but I certainly would depend on the administrators and the medical people to lead us and guide us.
Thank you. Lynn, Amy, Spiros?
I agree with Mary, what she just said. Basically, we have to trust our professionals. I mean, we have Dr. Nash and our nurses basically saying this isn't the right time. It's just not the right time. We have new guidance coming out. Maybe in a few weeks, things will be different, and then we can reevaluate. I think what you just said about, Dr. Peck, you just said that earlier, that you and the administrators look at it every day. When it's time, you let us know. I mean, I think everybody wants to go back. It's brutal on our teachers. It's brutal on our kids. I mean, everybody's suffering. Everybody is putting more work in than they ever did before. And, and obviously you struggle and you're not even making the same amount of success. I mean, I'm not saying we're not successful, but it's so much harder to get to that success. And it's just, this is a terrible situation for everyone, and nothing, I'm sure everyone wants things to go back to the normal, but I don't want to rush it. And I don't want to be the one that's bucking the CDC regulations. And I'm not going to be the one that says this is a good idea to go against what our medical professionals say.
Amy, thank you.
Yeah, I'm processing. I have a question and minimally one statement. My question is, why the number 9? Why are we bringing back 9 kids on February 16th? And, as I understand it, doing it in waves. So I'm assuming February 16th will be a wave of 9 kids, and then there'll be another wave when?
Those are our highest need kids, Amy. That's why we're bringing those kids back at that rate. I mean, Trish, if you want to speak to that, could go ahead. I know you got to be kind of under FERPA, a little careful what you say, but go ahead.
Certainly, I think everybody's alluded to that we've really prioritized our high need students, which I really appreciate the district's commitment to that from the start. Back in those committees last summer, my committee said the special class at the elementary level was important. So in September, we had those kids back 4 days. And I'll tell you, we've done it in waves already. So I want to say we have brought a lot of kids back in person 4 days. In November, we prioritized our high school 9th graders in special class because they were having a difficult time transitioning. So we had 10 more students come back then. December, we prioritized our 9th and 10th graders with IEPs because again, they were having difficulty. That was another 20 students we brought back 4 days. Starting in February, we brought back our 6th grade, which Mr. Rulos talked about, our students with IEPs, we brought back. Mr. Daniels and I have been working hard getting those students with IEPs back. So we are doing it. We have been doing each month, we reevaluate and get as many students. When I looked at the numbers, so far we have all of our out of district students too. They were a huge priority in the beginning. All of them have been going 4 days, at least 5 days. As of now, most of them have been since September. So really all of those students, that's about 50 to 60 students, have been going in person at least, 4 to 5 days. And then in district, we probably have about 80 students altogether in all the buildings that we've brought back 4 days already. So I think we really, committed to our high needs students and we followed through with that. So, but again, we did it safely. We had the space. We looked at everything to make sure that we followed those guidelines.
So we can only bring back 9 safely right now? I'm just trying to grasp.
That's just our next wave, our next, pretty much every month we've brought back 10 to 20 students. And we've kind of worked it out for 9 more elementary to come back.
Okay, and when do you anticipate the next wave?
Mr. Rulo and I are going to focus on 7th grade next. So we have, I think, another, Drew, 10 to 12 students that we're going to bring back probably in 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it for my question. I guess my statement would be, I don't like doing the hybrid any more than anyone else. However, timing doesn't feel right at this moment, especially since we have the potential for guidelines to change in just a few days. That said, if that happens, we're going to meet again and we're going to revisit this. If everyone around me is telling me that we can't do this right now, far be it for me to jump in and say, just because philosophically I believe we should, I'm not going to go against those who are doing this day in and day out and have the guide, you're following the guidance. So I'm not going to suggest we go against guidance. I am going to suggest, however, if and when the guidance changes, we revisit it immediately.
And Amy, I think we said that earlier, that absolutely. And in July and August, when we talk, I'm using the word fluid. This is fluid as things change. I don't know if anyone thought we'd still be here in February 2021 when we left in March of 2020 last year. But again, it's fluid. Everything changes so much daily. And if we do get those new guidelines and they're different, the admin team meets every Wednesday, 2.5 hours. We talk every single day. There's just a day doesn't go by that I don't talk to Dave and Catherine and Drew and Hannah. And we're working on this nonstop every day. And they'll tell you by shaking their heads, we talk every day, do we not? And we talk about this and what can we do? So we're not deaf to what's going on. We're not deaf to what the community's saying. We're not deaf to what the teachers are saying. It's a very difficult job right now for us to walk the tightrope between the staff, the community, the students, the hybrid, the remote, the bringing back the CDC, the DOH. I can go on and on. There's not any right answer, I don't feel right now. And to do what we're doing, it's worked for us to this point. And to go against that right now, I'm not sure. That's again, Catherine and I just said, we'll bring kids back. We can do that. But I can't guarantee you that it's going to be safe. And I can't guarantee you we're not going to have high exposures of COVID. I can't tell you you're not going to have high quarantining and exposures. So that's what we have to face. It's that trade-off. It's safety.
Do we know the magic numbers, so to speak, for bringing them all back? For example, if the guidelines go from 6 to 4 feet or 3 feet? I'm just throwing it out there. What are the magic numbers to get these kids back?
If they go to 3 feet, and I have not had in-depth conversations with the admin team, so I don't want to speak for them, but I think it is probably 95% more doable at 3 feet, just because you can condense the desk and you can get those kids in there. When you see, and Hannah and Catherine put the numbers up of the 5th grade with 22, 23, 24, that's still going to be difficult. And we can't split the grade because we don't have extra teachers. Okay. Will we figure it out if it comes to that? Yeah, we'll figure it out. I mean, we're smart people. Catherine and Hannah are very highly intelligent people, and our staff is highly intelligent. So we'll figure it out. But I think 3 feet for me would definitely be the number I would have to bring these students back and bring them back safely. Yeah, Catherine, you want to comment on that, or do you agree or disagree?
Yes, if it changed to 3 feet, obviously that opens up a lot more avenues for us for sure. But we want to make sure we follow all the other guidance that's still in place. And as we know, it's supposed to change in a couple of days. We'll see what is adopted by New York State. I know that's incredibly frustrating for all of us. And hopefully we can open and provide everybody a bit of hope, because we would love nothing more than to be able to do that. But the question I keep asking, and Dr. Peck and I have asked the same question: at what cost at this moment? At what cost is this? And it's something to really consider for all of us, for everybody involved in the process. It will come at a cost if we do it right this moment, for sure. Full opening.
I'm sorry.
That's it. No, I'm good. Thank you.
And to go back, Amy, the 3 feet, it's still middle school and high school are going to be tremendously difficult at 3 feet, because you have those students moving throughout the day nonstop. And again, even at the 3 feet, even if it's CDC and DOH says, yeah, we can do the 3 feet, just think about this. One student may come in contact with 75 or 80 other students in the course of a day. And that quarantine is going to wipe out grade levels. So, I mean, Mr. Rulo, looking at you, tell me how many times has 8th grade been wiped out, 6th grade, 7th grade, just from kids moving right now?
Yeah, the 8th grade's been closed a couple times. And honestly, like Kara hinted or said earlier, we have 7 staff members out this week. That's really our breaking point. If somebody else became ill or had to be out for a family reason or anything, we are really struggling to cover students in classes, even with their teachers, zooming in from home and teaching them. The other aspect I wanted to bring up to this conversation is, even if those guidelines might change where we can have students with masks on in classrooms 3 feet apart, another big issue we have is lunch, because I don't envision that changing when students have masks off. And we don't have a lot of extra space for lunch. I know in the middle school, could we make things happen? Probably, but we would have students eating lunch in the library and in an empty computer lab. How are we going to pick those students? Who's going to be happy when they can only eat with 5 other students in a computer lab or something? So that's those guidelines we have to look at too, and spaces in our building for that. So
I can appreciate that. Top of mind is, couldn't they eat at a desk? Whatever that last class was, eat there. No, is it ideal? Far from ideal, but it's getting them in school.
It would come into supervision issues at that point. I mean, who would supervise them? Because the teachers have duty-free lunches. So then if we had kids in 12 different classrooms, we need 12 different people supervising the classrooms.
Right. So and one other, our music program at the secondary level, we've been able to keep band and chorus because of the system we have in place, where I know some other districts that have more of their students at our level back are at general music only. Where, they're not necessarily singing or playing an instrument. So we've been able to keep those programs going positively forward too.
Mr. Rulo, that's an excellent point. I said that probably about an hour ago now, that we didn't eliminate programs that other districts did eliminate by bringing back students. And that's a very good one. I always think about the elementary and the repurposing and the pre-K, but that's a very strong point of we don't have just general music. We still have band and chorus. And I know districts who brought back more students don't have that. So it's a trade-off. And again, academically, we try to keep all the academics for our kids, keep their RTI, their AIS, their special ed, all those needs to be compliant, and not repurpose those teachers.
I can appreciate that, but there's got to be a decline in quality. So that's something to think about too. There's no way it's the same quality as it is. You're not maintaining quality this way.
I guess I'm confused how if we had to repurpose a teacher who wasn't a fourth grade teacher and we put them into a classroom with students, I'm not sure the quality would be there either. Or dropping music and chorus and band for just general music. I think there's a quality drop off there as well. There's definitely a drop off of our students not having pre-K coming into kindergarten without that very formative year of pre-K. And I know other districts who brought their students back Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday have did away with their pre-K program. And again, we haven't. We're running our pre-K, Catherine and Hannah, to the best of our ability right now, which is, and it's grant funded as well. So it just makes sense. So I think, Amy, I disagree with that we've given up quality. I think just the opposite. I think we've really tried to persevere and keep our quality, even so it's only 2 days a week. Just because you're there 4 days, if it's watered down, doesn't make it a better quality product, in my opinion. And I can tell you, I've heard from parents in other districts, and I've heard from parents in our districts, and some of the parents in other districts aren't happy with what they're doing. And I know some of the parents in our district aren't happy. So it's a catch-22, and it's the district you live in. But I've heard from parents in districts that kids are there 4 days a week, and again, they're not happy with everything that's going on. So it's not about making everyone happy. We can't do that. It's about what's best for our students, their safety and their academics. And from day one, I'll speak for the whole admin team. We've tried to put their safety and academics above everything. And that's what we're going to continue to try to do. So that's where we stand, I think.
Amy, I just wanted to interject in the high school though too. For a long period of time since I've been here, we've been bringing in the kids with special needs. Trish and I have worked very hard at that. But we've also been working hard at kids who are failing multiple classes. And that's a daily conversation with teachers. What kids do you want us to bring back? Guidance and counselors are working on that. We're doing that every day still, trying to work with kids, trying to work with parents to bring kids back into high school while maintaining that 6-foot barrier where at any possible time we can. So it's an ongoing process, and I'm sure it is for my colleagues as well.
What are we noticing for attendance? I know in-person had attendance struggles. Where are our attendance struggles, if there are any now?
I'm going to have to defer to the building principals on that. I'm not in the nuts and bolts of attendance every day in the buildings like you guys are.
Well, I'll take the first shot on this one. And we've got some kids in the high school, 9th and 10th graders in particular, that we have to try to chase down almost every day and trying to bring them in. It's really difficult if there's nobody home with supervising them to get them into the building, to get them to do schoolwork, things like that. I can't tell you exactly what the attendance rate is, but I'll be honest, it's a challenge with some of these kids.
Well, comparatively to in-school instruction, is it worse?
Yeah, I would say that's probably true, because lots of times, most of those kids we can, one of the important things that classroom teachers do is they develop a rapport and a relationship with kids. And that's what brings kids back in the building. And when you're trying to do this remotely, it's really, really difficult to develop that rapport with kids. And the kids who need us most are the ones that are sometimes hardest to access. And we're doing everything we can. I'll be honest with I've done more work with PINS this year than I've had my entire career, and that's 28 years as a high school principal. Okay, and working with everybody we possibly can to try to bring kids in, but it's hard, and it's not the attendance rate that any of us is comfortable with. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I'll be honest with you about that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, we have a handful, Amy, of students that are attendance issues, and every year we have a handful of students. I would say our biggest struggle this year are some of our families that are resistant to the hybrid model, staying full remote, but then not accessing classes and materials. So for the middle school, that's the group that's been the most difficult this year. But we are getting good attendance on our hybrid days, and even our remote students logging into their classes overall. It's not terrible.
Thank you.
My comment again is that parents are frustrated, and understandably, and then on the teacher side, and I can speak as a former teacher, that it's very, very difficult for teachers to know what they can do for the kids when they have them in school. And so they know what they're not doing when the kids aren't in their classrooms and you can't reach through the computer to get that one-on-one talk with some, one of the kids. So that would be my point, is that from a teacher's point of view, this is painful to do it this way.
I just
I think
want
we've
to share
heard
about
from
the
you.
elementary school attendance, Amy.
Yes, thank you.
We've had a higher, definitely a higher number of absenteeism. I've never done so many home visits in my, in the 4 years that I've been at Chenango. But we also we use Schoolzilla as a tool for our data. And I just pulled it up, just wondering, our average daily attendance as a district is at 95.3%, which is only 0.1 percentage lower than it was in the previous year. So as a whole district, we're not that much lower than where we were last year at this time. So, I mean, I can say our pupil personnel team, we work really, really hard to build those relationships with the kids who are struggling with their attendance. And we do attendance groups, we do phone calls, we do anything we can to try to get them a little bit more connected, even through the screen. I had a teacher email me a picture today of 2 kids meeting virtually to work on stuff together, just because they asked if they could. And so she was, she had her camera off and they were, it was like, she said, it felt like she was back in the classroom, even though it was full virtual. So, we're making those connections, even though there are those pockets of kids still really struggling with their attendance.
Thank you.
Lynn, I don't think we've heard anything from you. Would you like to chime in?
I mean, I would love to see all the kids back in school, but I don't want people to be uncomfortable or, a big breakout to happen or anything like that. And I agree that right now is not the time with the numbers that we have, in our area and the guidelines the way they are. But I do want to keep revisiting it and thinking of ways we can bring them back. And like Mike had mentioned, when it is time to bring them back, doing it kind of, a little bit at a time. Is that something that we're looking at? Is that how we're going to handle it? It's not just going to be, okay, everyone come back.
No, originally we looked at K1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, and we were going to space them out 2 weeks. So, and that may go, it may be K1 week, 2 the second, 1 the second week, 2 the third week. As we start to do that, we can have the conversations. And one of the things I will give a shout out to our teachers again for what a great job they've done, but they've been very instrumental working with us and talking with us and having very good open communication with us. Like I said, I sat in with the elementary with the grade level coordinators and the site-based, same with the middle school with the site-based and the high school, the site-based and the department chairs. And our staff is not shy of giving their opinion, which is very key to our success. We have to know what they're facing in the classroom. I'm not in the classroom every day, neither is my admin. So they're telling us boots on the ground, hey, here's what happens if you bring kids back. Here's what we're looking at. So for the teachers on tonight and the teachers are in those meetings, Mary Ann, who's president of our union, really appreciate how closely they've worked with us and how much we've been on the same page with them. And I can speak for the CFTA, I think, and if not, Mary will tell me I can't. They want kids back in school as badly as anyone does, but they want them back here safely. And I'm going to keep using the same word, safely. So, and I'm going to go back to Mary Collins, and she's absolutely right. I mean, teaching right now is harder than it's ever been with a hybrid, with a remote, with 2 lesson plans, with going back and forth and shuffling. So if we could bring these students back, we would bring them back. It's going back to what Dr. Nash said. We got to be able to do it safely. We can't have that major breakout. We can't have grades quarantine. We can't have huge amounts of staff members. It's been tough enough up to this point. If the board has no further questions, I'm more than happy to, with my admin team, the nurses, Doc Nash, take questions from the our public comment. I guess, Amy, if you want to read public comment and go into public comment now.
You want me to read Aaron's blurb for public comment?
If you want to open public comment, I can read it.
Okay.
So we're open for public. The public wishing to speak to the Board of Education will be allowed this period of time to do so under the following guidelines. Speakers will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes and the entire public comment session to a maximum of 30 minutes. Speakers are requested to raise their hand. They will be called on in order, with everyone having a chance to speak before someone is allowed to speak a second time. Speakers will not be allowed to personally attack any board member, administrator, or any of the public present. Also, no comments by the speakers will be permitted that deal with executive session subjects, such as individual personnel matters, discipline issues pertaining to specific individuals, including students, and speakers will not be allowed to read letters unless they'd been previously submitted to the board. So if you raise your hand, I can click on you in order. Kristen Brennan. And you just need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you so much for all that you are doing. I'm just curious, is there any plans for having school in session on Wednesdays?
That is a very good question. That is something that we did not talk about tonight, but we are looking at that as an admin team. It's actually on some of the surveys we sent out to the teachers. And it's something, and Drew, I think I'm going to defer to you on this a little bit, because you had the idea about maybe a half a day in school and then the other half for teachers. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I think we're in the beginning stages of some discussions of maybe, how remotely could we restructure, part of that day. We do dedicate a significant portion of time on Wednesdays for our staff to prep and plan, especially because they're planning so many different types of lessons and putting information up online for our students and for our families, and for us to also hold professional development sessions and meeting sessions, because we used to be able to do that sometime, in our remedial sessions or after school, but our dismissal's taking a little bit longer than it did in the past. So that eats into that time. So right now it's in the beginning stages of seeing how can we restructure maybe that office hour time to have more instruction time with our students.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Did
just
that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I don't know.
We lost her. Erin, any way we can get her back?
I'm looking.
Yep, she has her hand up.
Oh, good. Okay, hold on. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, why did we set up it that way in the first place? Was it because we thought it would be safer to, I think it was like a cleaning day on Wednesday, or was it because of, staff needed to regroup? Or
In the beginning, it was really a combination of both. It was for office hours, it was for meetings, it was for cleaning. We've learned a little bit since July and August when we put the plan together that it's not so much a contact virus as it is a one that's spread in the air. And again, it's a time that's when the staff has their meetings. It's when they meet with one another. It's a planning prep day. So there's a lot that goes on that day. But like Mr. Rulo said, we are looking at that to see if we can condense the day down and maybe do a half of an instructional day combined with maybe half a day for office hours and meetings. So that's something definitely that's on the plate of the admin to look at. And I'm sorry it didn't come up tonight. It's kind of, we concentrate on bringing students back, but that day is definitely being looked at.
okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Raise your hand. Amy Hibbard.
Hi, I just want to say you guys are all doing an excellent job, and I understand it's hard to talk about bringing them back right now, and I get this. I have a high school student, and the thought of him not coming back is very hard. I think we're missing a big part of the whole component. I keep hearing about, we need to do things safely, and I understand that, but I think we're missing the mental health of these kids. I know the struggle in my house. I know my house isn't alone. And if we can't come back full time, sports are so important. We're getting those back. But what about the clubs and the activities that maybe they can do through Zoom? My kid is a sports kid, so he's all for coming back for sports. My daughter, who just graduated from there, is the opposite, and she was a drama kid. And there's all these kids out there who aren't getting anything to help with their mental health. And to me, that is just as important. Like academics absolutely are 100%. I don't feel they're getting their full education this year. It's not your guys' fault, but we need to think about their mental health too. And these high schoolers, they're struggling. Thanks. That's all I have.
And I think when full contact sports open back up the first of the month, I think that does open up for the board to consider some clubs and some groups to open back up as well. So I think that's something we can look at. And just really quick, Dave Daniels, can you talk a little about proms and things we have going on in the high school that we know are going to happen and things we're starting to plan on? Just, you know, we've concentrated so much on the elementary. We have not forgot about the middle school and the high school.
That's good. Yep. Yeah, I've worked with Jason Motel shortly after a few parents started asking questions about what would happen with prom. And so we have actually set a date for June 18th for a prom at the Chenango Golf Course. They have an outside pavilion type thing, tent or whatever. You know, it's not the classy facility we'd like to do in some respects, but at least it gives us the opportunity, if we have good weather, we can open up, have good airflow and things like that. And, you know, and Jason's got a lot of good ideas to do things that might be fun for the kids afterwards. You know, kind of an after prom type thing that we might still be able to do. You know, the conversation was about, you know, the golf course offered fireworks as an option. We're looking at the possibility of having the magician or someone like that coming in to take, you know, to provide some entertainment for kids, you know, hitting some golf balls in the dark and things. So, you know, we're looking for whatever we can do to make it as positive for kids as we possibly can. And there is also a conversation about, you know, maybe some kids on Friday night, maybe some kids on Saturday night. So, you know, we're still working on it, but, you know, it is our hope that we'll be able to do something for the kids that's very positive for kids like that.
In graduation as well, Dave. I mean, I know last year we did the 50, the 3 sections.
Yep.
So hopefully this year has guidance, you know, decreases in people gathering outside. I'm looking at the board who was with me last year at the stadium down in Binghamton, and people thought we were crazy that we had literally 1/10 of the stadium was being used, and we put 3 sections of graduation through there. If someone just looked at the picture, they literally thought we were been insane for doing it the way we did. So I'm really hoping that we can get a full class graduation this year. And I think that'd definitely be key as well. So I really do want to revisit the clubs, and I'll be talking with the board in the coming meetings and probably through some emails and whatnot. But I do agree that now that sports has started back up, we should start looking at some of those other things that we have tabled in the beginning and see if we can get some of those things up and running again.
Mandy Black.
Hi, thanks everyone. I just wanted to put it on our radar as a person who teaches a lot of students that are college bound and, you know, having a child in college myself and things, that when we are thinking about who we're bringing back, if we're not going to bring everyone back, that maybe it's not just the students that have the most needs academically as far as an IEP goes, but I see a lot of students who are concerned about their abilities in their future plans, students who are typically a high 90s student who's now a low 90s student, but it's really affecting their mental health because they feel like they're not meeting their full potential, right? So maybe we need to think outside of the box if we don't bring everyone back and try to identify. And I don't know how you do that because it affects everyone, but maybe just consider that there's all different kinds of kids and that we want to make sure that we're helping everyone meet their potential.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's a point well taken.
I agree with that. And what Amy said too about the mental health, and Mandy, maybe that's the next group that we identify. If we can't bring everyone back, can we identify these kids that are really struggling mentally? I know some kids are doing great on remote. They love remote. And then there's other kids that they're just not motivated.
Before we move on, I just got a text message from one of the teachers just to remind us that the Grease and Sing is on YouTube tomorrow, and the student council is looking to do virtual trivia and competition with other schools. So there are some activities that are going on in the high school right now, and I know all students aren't involved, but again, I think it's a good sign that things are starting back up. The Grease and Sing's always been in December. It's been a staple since I've been in the district for 9 years, and you know, at least we're getting that out on YouTube. So can't do everything like we'd like to, but there are some positives going on right now. I would just like to thank, as we move on, I think public comments over it. I'd like to thank Joy and Kim and Diane, Doc Nash, Kara, all you guys for being on tonight. Dave Daniels, Catherine, Hannah Elwin, Drew, all you guys, I appreciate it. And as we go on with the meeting, you guys can sign off if you'd like to, and we'll just continue the meeting as we normally do. But thank you guys for your input, much appreciated. And without my admin team, my staff, you know, I couldn't do the job I'm doing with the school, and much appreciated. You just don't see how much effort these guys put in. So really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I just want to ask the board if the guidelines should change, you know, drastically, potentially in the next few days, can we agree that we will revisit this immediately?
I think we need to give our admin some time to come to talk about it, and when they're ready. I mean, I'm willing to meet whenever, but I don't think we have a meeting until they have time to come up with something, because
yeah,
you know,
I would
they're
just
going
ask
to need some time to digest it.
Yeah, you got to give us a few days, because in addition to doing that, we're still running buildings in a district.
Right. I can appreciate that. I just don't want to, you know, I'll respect guidelines, but to be below the guidelines, that's not where I stand. That I wouldn't support that as one person. So.
Yeah, I personally don't have a problem doing that, but like I said, you're going to have to give us a few days to
Right.
digest and think and make sure we're you know, I don't want to get to a board meeting and not have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Understandable.
and we just need time to get together. So I would say if you gave us a week from when the new guidelines came out, I think we'd be more than happy to probably have a meeting at that point. But,
Okay.
and
I think that's
know
reasonable.
Catherine and I have had 100 conversations, and an hour later we'll call each other and go, okay, well, I just thought of this, or it's just the way it is. There's just so many spinning parts to this. It's not as simple as just, okay, the guidelines are now 3 feet. We can bring everybody back. It's just not that simple. There's still a lot of moving pieces to do that.
Joe, I have a question about sports. What sports are going on now, and like when did the spring sports start?
I wish Dave was on here. I know that they start, Mike, you probably know because you're reffing. They start February 1st. Is it March 1st and April 1st, correct?
I think April, a little bit later than April 1st. I'm not positive, but I know the fall sports start on March 1st. And then I think it's a little bit, I want to say the 15th of April, around that is when spring sports start.
And Lynn, that actually came down from our governor that we could open up those sports, and that went through the Broome County DOH.
Right.
As you know from my weekly memos, we met ad nauseum to get that plan through, and the district needed a plan signed off by myself, Doc Nash, to get that done. So that was very tedious as well. It was kind of the governor said, do it, and told Broome County to figure it out. And then Broome County kind of told the schools, and there's a lot of give and take. So it happened, Lynn, but it was not a smooth process in the least. I can tell you that.
Okay. To Amy's point about, you know, if the guidelines change, she wants to move as fast as we can. Can we at the very least like identify, like, I think you said we kind of did already identify which groups we would want to bring back first. So we do have a partial plan, just depending, we can't formulate a complete plan until we know what guideline changes are made.
Well said. We actually had the plan of K1. And again, I don't have my paperwork in front of me. It was K1, I think 6, 9, and there was like 3, 4, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. We're going to phase them all back in all 3 buildings. So it just wasn't going to be the entire elementary, the entire middle school, the entire high school. Literally, we'd phase them back in 1 or 2 grades at a time, depending on the building, with probably a week or 2 weeks in between them. It'd just be overwhelming, Lynn, to bring
Yeah, oh, I agree, especially when you look at the number of kids that have been going to the nurse, and if, you know, you brought everybody back and that doubles or triples, you know.
The other thing too, we gotta remember, in our district, we only have 2 bus runs, right? We have an elementary, and middle school, and a high school bus run. Other districts have put on bus runs to do what they're doing. Okay, we don't have that capability. We have the 2 bus runs. And so we got to make sure these kids are safe on the buses as well. So that's something else. You know, Bernie hasn't spoken at all tonight, but that's something that, you know, we got to work with Bernie McDermott, who's our Director of Transportation Operations and District Data Coordinator, to make sure we can do the safely with the transportation as well. There's so many moving parts outside of just putting the kids back into a classroom, getting them to and from school. Drew Rulo brought up eating of the lunch. I mean, there's just so much that goes into this. It's a lot of moving pieces, and we have to take them all into account when we do it.
Right.
I just have one more comment, and it's more so just looking outside in. I can't help but look at it. It's hard to process that sports have resumed, but our kids are still not in full time. And I have kids in sports, and I'm thrilled that it's back, because I know, for example, my daughter, you know, that time is her saving grace in some aspects. I see that. I see the importance. It's just still hard to see how, you know, we can sign off for that, but we can't get that back in. I'm just making that statement because I don't want a single person to think that that sits well with me. It doesn't sit well with me. Not that sports are back, great, they're back, but what doesn't sit well is we still have kids at home struggling.
That's our government, and I think we need to, you know, I just want people that are listening to you to realize that you're not being critical of our school, you know, our admin, because I think they're doing great.
Absolutely true.
This is our government. This is okay.
Oh yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, it's just absolutely no. I know our admin are working to the bone. I know they are, and I appreciate every one of them.
There are a lot of superintendents, and they're not good with sports resuming, but our governor said it could happen. And when the governor said it could happen, what choice did we have to make it happen? Okay. Every other district made it happen. We had to make it happen. And again, a lot of superintendents, I don't believe were happy with the decision because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But our governor plays politics, and like any, he decided it was good to do. But that was nothing that I had control, the board had control, or anyone had control over. And
absolutely, I understand that. It's just, again, coming from a parent's perspective, we're doing this, but we can't do that. You know, that's all. It's frustrating. So I share in the frustration, because in mental health, I've said this for years, that to me is critical, because if up here is a struggle, how are you going to learn? So I'm a 41-year-old adult, and the mental health in myself through this, not as a struggling adolescent, has been difficult. So I can only imagine what these kids are going through. I can only imagine. Just know I feel for you very, very much. And we are going to do everything we can as a district, as a board, to get you back in. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay. 4.1 to 4.3, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve 4.1 to 4.3.
Motion.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mary. Discussion. Roll call.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes.
Aye.
Mary Collins.
Aye.
Michael Vavra.
Aye.
And Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 4.4, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve this agreement subject to the ratification by the CFSS-OMA entered into by and between the Chenango Forks Central School District and the Chenango Forks Support Staff Operations and Maintenance Association, that does hereby amend the terms of the existing collective bargaining agreement that governs the employment relationship between district and the CFSS-OMA, effective upon signature as attached. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Discussion? Roll call.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes,
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Can I just,
Motion passed.
before you move
Go ahead.
on, thank you very much to the board and to the support staff that contract's been a long time coming. Hopefully they ratify it and we can go on. So appreciate the board approving that tonight.
5.1, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve the recommendations of the Committee on Preschool Special Education and Special Education. And be it resolved that the Board of Education confirms the recommended placements. Motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Discussion. Roll call.
Amy O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes.
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 5.2, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve the agreement between Chenango Fork Central School District and Smith Site Development LLC for 2019 Smart School Bonds Act SCI project number 193048 as attached. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Spiros. Discussion. Roll call.
Amy O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes,
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 5.3. The board hereby resolves to appoint Bethany A. Centrone Esquire to serve as special counsel with respect to the Commissioner's Appeal number 21503 pursuant to the intermunicipal agreement with Albany, Schoharie, Schenectady, Saratoga Board of Cooperative Educational Services and hereby approve such intermunicipal agreement. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion. Roll call.
Amy O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes,
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Motion passed. Okay, 6.1 and 2 are FYI. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve 6.3 through 6.6. You have a motion, please.
Motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Spiros.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Roll call. I'm sorry, discussion. Roll call.
Amy O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes,
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 6.7, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve a donation in the amount of $100 from TR Events of Binghamton and a donation in the amount of $350 from GHS Federal Credit Union to be used for the Christmas Basket Fund. We have a motion, please.
Motion.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion. I just gotta say this grabbed my attention. I can't even imagine a business like TR Events, how difficult this past year has been. So to see a donation of any amount that impresses me because I can't imagine what a business like that has gone through. And thank you both to TR Events and GHS. Roll call.
Amy O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes,
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 7.1, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to approve the BOE minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting of January 14th, 2021, and the special Board of Education meeting January 27th, 2021, as attached. I have a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Lynn.
Second.
Thank you, Spiros. Discussion. Roll call.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes.
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
and Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. 8.1, upon recommendation of the superintendent, a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Thank you, Spiros.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion and roll call.
Amy O'Brien.
Aye.
Spiros Tomatoes.
Aye.
Mary Collins,
Aye.
Michael Vavra,
Aye.
and Lynn Lockwood.
Aye.
Motion passed. Our next regular scheduled meeting will be March 11th unless guidelines change and we meet sooner. Okay, have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Right.